to our webinar. Thanks a lot for signing up. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I started doing these sessions mainly because people have this misconception on how easy it is to go from pitch deck to funding. I'm doing some small talk while everybody has a chance to tune in, but I've gotten better at multitasking, so I can see attendees here, I can see the chat. So thanks a lot for joining, and thanks a lot for tuning in. Yeah, so I was chatting with a good friend of mine, who's recently going through a fundraise, and I was super jealous, and I told him because he essentially sent me a pitch deck to give him some comments on it, sent it, and the next week he already had some investors kind of following up and some commitments. And what I want to say is, like, that usually doesn't happen. That never happens. It happened to him because he had just sold his company, and this is his third startup. So, like, he has a good network of people that trust him and know him. But for the rest of us that are trying to raise, going from pitch deck to funding is nothing but a straight line and more like a big convoluted mess. And that's why I came up with this session. And the idea is to show you guys a little bit of the red flags and the stuff that doesn't work around here. So we've been working on pitch decks for a while, about 10 years now since we started the company. Over $500 million raised on pitch decks that we helped design or write. And again, like, these are some of the red flags that we found along the way. So from pitch decks, we're going to talk about that a little bit. Targeting the wrong type of investor, problems in the way you reach out to them, problems in the due diligence, and in the way you budget rounds. So let's get to it. So let's start with the pitch deck, of course. Maybe the reason why you guys are here, or why most of you guys are here. I don't really like to do this pop quiz. Since it's a smaller group today, I don't know if anybody will dare answer, but I normally like to ask, what's wrong with this slide? I'm gonna give you like 15 seconds before I give you the answer, so if you maybe have a chance to figure it out. What is wrong with this slide? All right, so, sorry, I should tell you what's wrong with this slide. Okay, so what's wrong with this slide is that this is a really, really bad TAM slide. It's a TAM slide, market size slide. The reason why you would put a TAM slide on your pitch deck is because you're trying to portray a message of how big your company can get, how big your company will get. But when you have a TAM that's 620 billion, that obviously doesn't align with reality, right? So no company, or maybe two companies in the entire world, have a 620 billion TAM. The reality is that most of us are going to operate on TAMs that are much smaller. So that's problem one. Problem two is that this is a top-down approach, right? So 620 billion to, say, 7% of that, and that's our market, right? So we're just going to take 7% of the entire industry. Why 7? Why not 3? Why not 1? Why not 10? Right? That's not usually how it works. So a great TAM is the inverse of this. A great TAM is a bottom-up approach where you say, well, this is the amount of clients that we can get. And it's not just everybody, right? In here, again, problem number 3 is like, hey, we're just targeting early adopters in the EU. Well, that could be millions of people. Are they tech savvy? Are they early adopters in food or in tech or in what, right? So that's too broad of a market. So the first step is defining a group, a central group of people. Maybe it's maybe it's companies in a certain industry. Maybe it's people with a certain purchasing power that live in a certain area, that have a certain age range, right? So, and that use these products on a regular basis and that pay for subscriptions, right? So a really narrow, really targeted group. And then you simply multiply that by how much revenue you make from each of these customers. And that's how you literally land at TAM. For a B2B, it's, hey, how many companies that need a product like this, that are in my ideal target size, that are in my ideal region, where, that have the ideal employee size for the product that I'm offering, that don't have other solutions, or that would be willing to replace their current solutions for this, and then that times your pricing. That's your TAM. So these top-down approaches usually don't go very far. So that's the solution to this. So I'll give you another one. What's wrong with this other slide? I'll give you, again, 10 seconds to think about it. By the way, we're live streaming this on YouTube, and we get this question a lot. Is there a recording of this? Yes, there is. It's on our YouTube channel, on the Startup Club channel. I see you, Suhas, and people on the YouTube stream. Okay, so Okay, an answer, Giorgio. So too much focus on the approach. Almost correct this answer. So this is a go-to-market slide. Go-to-market slide and pitch deck should this is a slide that should tell investors that you understand your market really well, that you know how to get customers, that you know how to get in front of them, and that you're going to beat the competition at it. Normally, the way you do that, or the way you sort of portray that message, or the way you convince someone of that, is by showing that you have a strategy that's quite unique, or that's quite effective, or that's really working. That you have an insight that the others don't have. But there are no insights here. This is literally just a list of marketing tactics, just a list of what's the 10 marketing tactics. One of my favorite books in startups is a book called Traction by Gabriel Weinberg, who's the founder of DuckDuckGo. He has this thesis that there are only 19 marketing channels in the entire world, from offline to digital, and you can classify every marketing tactic into one of those 19 channels. I would dare say that it's probably not even 19, it's probably like 15. But the the end answer to that is you can't just put 10 of the 19 marketing channels in the entire world here and just not talk about what you're doing, right? So none of this stuff is making you special. Why are you going to be better at SEO? Why are you going to do influencer marketing better than anyone else? How are you getting into billboards and rate? Like, this sounds like butter spread over too much bread. It's not specific. It doesn't give insights on what you're doing. To me, the ideal go-to-market slide is literally one tactic that's really working, and that you really understand, or that you'd put your hands over fire for that marketing tactic because you know that's going to work. Could be marketing, could be sales, could be outbound, whatever. But one tactic, maybe two. The pitch deck that raised our seed round, we raised about $1 million seed round a while back, was literally that. It's like, hey, here's our core marketing tactic, which was at that time search ads. And we understood those very well. So my slide had the unit economics and the cost per ad and how much we had been expanding, is just like really convincing someone that these guys know what they're doing, that it's working, and that it's growing. And then a little add-on on maybe a second slide on go-to-market on our next best thing tactic, which at that time was SEO. And it still is. But at that time, SEO, we weren't sure if it was going to work. So we kind of like wrote, the backbone of our pitch deck was, hey, we really know how to grow this with ads. We are starting to play around with SEO. And that worked for me. And I think that many of the pitches that we write, that's what usually works. Just one tactic that's working really, really well. Okay. Now I see the groups have grown, so more people tune in. Hi, everybody who just joining. Okay, so I want to ask where you guys are struggling with the pitch deck. I normally get similar answers to this question, but it's a good way to get you guys to interact a little bit. So three chances, or three issues, or three struggles that people usually have with their pitch decks, and I can focus my time on over the next few slides on the one that gets the most answers. So one is story, right? So if you're maybe struggling to summarize your company story, to compress the company story into not 80 slides, but 15 or 20 slides, or maybe figuring out what to include, or how to talk about where your company is. If that's you, just type out story in either of the chats. Same goes for you guys on YouTube, even though you have like a 15-second delay. Option two is slides, right? So if you're struggling with a specific slide, maybe the TAM, maybe the go-to-market, we talked about those, or the financials. If you're struggling with a specific slide, just type slides and maybe the name of the slide that you guys are having trouble with. Again, we're going to go over my ideal story arc for a pitch deck in a sec. So I can maybe stop for a little bit if I can help answer questions about it. And then the other option is design. So if you're struggling with design, if you need some insight on how to design the slides, or how to make them look better, how to apply branding, and so on, I can spend a little bit of time talking about it. So don't be shy. Ask away. Okay. As you guys type out the idea, like the general thing that you want to have, I have this concept of zooming out. Like, sometimes we get a little bit caught up on, like, hey, this slide, I don't know if it's working. Honestly, like, people get caught up in whether the title should go in the top right corner or top left corner. People get caught up on so many things, and sometimes where you're kind of like looking at a zoomed in version of the pitch deck, it's really hard to discern and to decide what to focus on. So I have this abstract concept of zooming out, like stepping back. If you're doing a painting and then you step back just to see how it's all looking, like, I'm gonna kind of echo back this a couple of times through the session today. It's like take a moment, take a step back, and make sure that the slide that you're talking about or that the stuff that you're putting on the pitch deck is fulfilling that purpose. So, before you get caught up in TAM and running TAM estimations or financial forecast and all that stuff, remember that a pitch deck is a company story. It's a summary of what the company has accomplished and a vision for what the company can become. It's a company story, where you are now, and how are you going to grow to a really exciting, huge business. That's the gist of it. And to me, the perfect strategy, the perfect arc for a pitch deck is this. I'm going to move over so you guys can, please, if you want to steal a screenshot from this session, it's this one. I normally don't share my slides, so now's your chance to take a screenshot of it. This to me is the perfect story arc. You can find this across our blog. We've written a couple articles about it. It's kind of like the long written version of what I'm about to say. But to me, this is a fantastic story arc, not only because it encompasses all the slides that you should be including on a pitch deck, but also I think does so in a good cohesive structure, something that makes sense, a story that's easy to follow, and that's exciting. So I'm going to go over each section, moving on. So intro, not stopping here for too long. Intro just makes up the cover slide. Please never, ever include executive summaries. I hate executive summaries of a pitch deck. A pitch deck is designed or should be designed to be consumed in something like 4 minutes. This is literally the amount of time that investors spend on a pitch deck. We've actually measured this. So for 4 minutes, so when you're doing a 4-minute presentation, you don't need an index or a summary, right? It's a quick enough presentation that people can consume without the executive summary. Also, executive summaries make me think a little bit of those movie trailers for shitty movies that the trailer tells you the entire story of the movie. So why would you even go watch the movie now? That's an executive summary, so please don't add those. What I do like to recommend adding is this concept of traction teaser. Sometimes I've run into decks that run long, or that where I'm reading something, it's like, hey, this SaaS platform for email. It's like, okay, like yet another email client. What? Like that's not very exciting. But suddenly this company's making, it's making 3 million in monthly recurring revenue, and it's growing by 5% month over month. Like that's a crazy growth company. And sometimes you might lose people along the way if you don't tell them about how well you're doing. So I like this idea of adding a traction teaser if and only if you have really exciting traction going on. So include that at the top of your deck, literally slide 2. But again, only if you have really exciting revenue numbers to show. If you don't worry, we'll get to traction later. Sometimes, rarely, and I need to adjust my slides for this. Companies starting with a team, like literally slide 2 is the team. Again, to me, only applicable if the team is like a really experienced ex-Googler, X type of team that has been operating for a while and that's doing really well. Like that's exited a couple of companies. Like that's the type of team that you would put as slide number 2. But otherwise, just save that for later. Okay. Next up, status quo. The status quo section should answer one question. Again, this is my zoom out concept. So if you're struggling with any of these slides, take a moment, step back, zoom out, and check if this section is answering this question, which is, what opportunity have you discovered in the market? What is happening in the market that you have discovered a way to tackle that's like a really bad pain point for people, for companies, for people that they're struggling with, and that they're willing to spend good money on? So what opportunity have you discovered in the market? Normally that is made up of 2 slides, which are the market overview and the problem/business opportunity slide. To me, the problem slide should be a good kind of like a mirror answer to your solution slide. One of my favorite slides in the entire world is the Airbnb's original pitch deck. We can share the link on that if you guys want to check it out. I'll make sure I put this next time. But yeah, so it's this slide that has 3 problems, which are people want to save money when they travel, hotels leave you disconnected to the experience of the city, and there's no easy way to book a spare room in your house. Like those are 3 undebatable, clear, single line problems that Airbnb was built on, right? So this problem premise is really useful, and I think that accompanied with a solution slide that literally answers each one of those 3 problems that you put out. Like to me, that's the perfect duo of problem and solution. So that's how you go from status quo to the product section, or solution/product section. So this is the section that founders struggle with the least. It's normally the easiest section, normally, because it's just talking about what you're building. It's talking about your product, and that's normally easy for people. The dangers here are, running it too long, so you have to balance that out. It's not just talking about the product. I know your founders are usually very excited about the product, so it's fine, but don't run it too long. Make sure you leave space to talk about the other stuff, and you put enough priority in talking about the other stuff. But also, if a founder doesn't have a product that's ready, and it run into a fair share of founders that are just at the idea stage, they have no clue how the product is going to look or what it's going to do. That normally shows here, and it's bad, right? So at the earliest moment at which you can raise money for a company is not at the idea stage, but at the pre-seed stage, where you should already have a good idea of how the product's going to look. So, solution or product section, what have you built to tackle this status quo problem, this business opportunity? How does it work, and who is it for? So normally the slides that would make up this are solution, product, a demo. I don't love demos. Normally people don't have time to watch videos, but I can be, sometimes it works. How does it work? Tech infrastructure, if there's something really cool, really advanced about what you guys are building. Case study. I love case studies, by the way, usually more for B2B products, where you can show, hey, like this is how the product is evolving. This is how the product changes. This is how a company that's using this product has evolved, or this is how they're using the product. And what I like about case studies is that it's a good way to kind of give an example of the company that you target, show that you've actually seen this product work. But it's like telling a story of how your product is great. That's why case studies usually work really well. They also kind of prove traction a little bit, that somebody already adopted this, and that you were able to sell it to them. Business model, a lot of people struggle with this slide, mostly because they try to kind of run some projections, and it's like, oh, we need 1,000 customers to be profitable, and we're going to get there. This is not a slide to do that. That's on your financial forecasts. The business model is just a simple slide, really, to talk about how you make money. How do you make money? Answer in the business model slide. Roadmap, I think, is great. Normally, I would focus the roadmap on the next 18 months, because normally a round of funding is going to fund you for something like 12 to 24 months, right? So focus on what's going to happen immediately after. Maybe talk a little bit about what's going to happen longer term, like further out in the future, but you have to get there first, right? So really the focus of the roadmap is on the stuff that's coming, maybe a little bit on important milestones behind you. Incorporating is not a milestone. It's just spending $300 and going to Delaware, having someone go to Delaware and incorporate you. But that's so that's not a milestone. I think of really exciting milestones like launches or traction milestones. Okay, next section is the market section. So the market section should answer, again, zoom out if you're struggling, and should answer this simple question, which is, how much are you growing, and how much is your company going to continue to grow in the next few months and years? So slides that you would normally include here are attraction, unit economics, go to market. We talked about that. Potential outcomes. The Uber pitch deck has a nice potential outcome slide. That's a fun read. Market size, TAM, again, we talked about those. That's usually what comes in the market section. And then last but not least, the why us section, which is, think of this as a story, and this is kind of like the punchline of the story. It's like, hey, like, here's this huge market opportunity. Here's this idea of a product or this concept of a product that we've built. Here's the market for it. And now let's just nail this deck with here's why we are the right company to do this. So normally the slides so that's the question that you're answering. And the slides that you would normally include here are your competitor slide, competitive advantages, your secret sauce, if it's something that you haven't talked about before, your unfair advantages, and your team, right? This is a good moment to talk about the team, which is because you're coming from this kind of riding a wave of excitement. It's like, this is a really exciting company, and then this is why we are the people to execute on this. And that's that. After that, you have the ask, which is just the financial forecasts and just asking investors for how much money you need. There's nothing that exciting about it. Financial forecasts are, after all, forecasts. very important, very crucial, but they are forecasts, and we're going to talk about those in a sec. And then the ask is just, the the end of the deck. Okay, so some resources, free resources for you guys that may be useful. Our Slidebean, if you didn't know, it's a self-service platform for people to write their pitch decks, or at least that's part of what we do. So we have a couple of templates that may be useful. The Airbnb template that we mentioned, and we've built like this main Slidebean template coming up in 1 million uses. And yeah, so if you can start either of those, they all follow this, or overall follow this story arc, the structure that I've been talking about. If you're struggling to write any of your slides, you should check out our AI writer. It's also, you can also kind of run a first pitch deck for free. It'll take the input that we ask is your website. So we'll do a crawl of your website and try to generate a pitch deck, or sort of reverse engineer a pitch deck from that. It's not perfect, it's AI, but it's a start. And hopefully it lets you kind of get some ideas in place and some structure in place too. If you need some human help, if you need some actual help from our team, 2 ways we can help. We have a subscription called Slidebean Accelerate, where our team works with you every month to review your pitch deck and improve it. It's not People normally stick around for 3 or 4 months as they run through some pitch deck improvements and get ready to pitch investors. The other perk of the Accelerate plan is that everybody gets a kind of like a kickoff strategy call with me. So we talk a little bit about fundraising strategy. Normally it's a quick session to talk about, hey, like, how are you, what type of investors are you pitching? Are you at the right time to raise money? Is it, is this the right angle? Is this the right approach to the round? Like, we normally talk about that stuff. Like I said, we went through 2 rounds of funding ourselves, so I get how that works. And I know that sometimes questions come up that I can't get to in the webinars. By the way, if you have questions about everything we've covered, we normally have time for questions at the tail end of these live sessions. So drop them in the chat. I'll get back to those. So that's Accelerate. And, we also have a consulting branch that can help companies write pitch decks, and we can do that from scratch. So if we can help with that, just email us at webinars@Slidebean. Okay, let's talk a bit about investor types now. Now, the main mistake, or another big mistake I see founders make, is they go after the wrong type of investor because they don't understand well, or they're misjudging what stage their companies are in. So I built this little cheat sheet table, which I know has a very small font because there was a lot of stuff to get in there, and we needed to get it into a web page. So my team's going to paste this page if you want to visit it and follow along, because I know the sacrifice of my little floating screen behind me is that maybe it's not readable, maybe. But overall, the concept of this is that I want to make sure that you guys understand the 3 main stages where you guys might be in, which are idea stage, pre-seed stage, or seed stage. So normally, first rule of thumb is that you normally raise money to reach the next fundable milestone. So if you're a pre-seed company, the money that you raise needs to last until you get to seed. And if you're a seed company, the money that you raise needs to be enough to get to Series A. Always milestones. If you get stuck in the middle of these 2, it's usually bad news because it's hard to raise money in the middle of those 2. So let's talk first about what a pre-seed company is. So a pre-seed company is 2 founders that have all the skills needed to build and launch their first prototype. A founding team that can build this, that doesn't need external help. If you're a medical company, normally the founding team has a PhD, or like the chief science officer, and that's part of the team. If you're a tech company, the founding team must have a tech co-founder that can build a product, execute on the product. Companies that don't have, like tech companies that don't have a tech co-founder, that don't have the skills to build their own product in-house, can't raise money. Like, that's as plain and simple as that. And I see a lot of founders kind of trying to raise money to go and hire a dev agency, a dev shop. It doesn't work. You can do that, but not with investors' money. No investor is going to give you money to do that. Okay, so founders with the core skills, deep insights into the problem, a clear picture of how the product should work. That's, again, going back to the solution section where you can lay out how that product works, show maybe some screenshots, some mock-ups of the product, rather than just kind of like an idea of how it would work. This founder fellow I told you about that recently sold his company, wrote a pitch deck, and started getting emails from investors back within days. Doesn't usually happen. I think it happened to him because, again, he had just sold his company. But the other reason is he had been working for like 6 months in our prototype. He had, by himself, had been coding a prototype that he could show that the product was working and that it existed. So That's another one of the reasons why he's kind of skipping some of these stages and kind of going and raising a pretty large round from the get-go. But anyway, so the team has maybe started developing a low fidelity prototype. We're still in the pre-seed stage. This doesn't necessarily apply for hardware companies. A hardware company, normally needs a lot more capital to get off the ground, or like deep R&D if you're building your own AI, your own large language model, not just plug into OpenAI's API, but like literally building your own AI for something. Yeah, you maybe, you maybe classify as an R&D hardware startup in this list. Normal red flags that companies that think that they're on pre-seed don't have. They're missing a co-founder, so they're missing somebody with the core skills to build a product. If you can't build your product, you're not a pre-seed company yet. Yeah, and that's normally the biggest red flag. Okay, so when you raise pre-seed funding, it needs to last enough to get to seed. So what's seed, right? So what's a seed stage company? Again, with the exception of hardware R&D startups, which normally take a little bit more money, more time, a seed company is a company that has a product in the market, that has launched, that has customers, that's growing, that has maybe $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month in revenue. That's a seed stage company. So a lot of companies think that they're seed because they just launched their product last week. That's not seed yet. If you actually just launched your product last week, you're literally in the middle of pre-seed and seed. And it's a really bad time to raise money because investors can just look at the product and wait, right? If you have a few customers, a handful of your early customers, and okay, look, this looks exciting, but call me when you have more customers. Call me when you're a seed stage company. But a lot of companies, a mistake that a lot of companies make is that they bootstrap all their way through their pre-seed round. They spend every dime they have to build a product and finish it, launch it. They don't have money to grow it. They don't have time to grow it. They need money desperately, but that's a really bad position to be in to raise money. Happened to me. My first company died literally because of this. So speaking from experience, normal red flags in a seed company is that the company launched and launched the product, but it got no traction, or that they raised the pre-seed round but couldn't get enough traction. That's normally a really bad hurdle to overcome as a seed stage company. Hope that gives you some sense. I won't talk about the later stages, but those are all laid out in the little cheat sheet I mentioned. Okay. Another kind of thought process that you can run through is your company ready to raise capital, right? From a numbers perspective. So let's say that you've run some math and you understand that you want to raise something in the lines of $500,000. That's what you need to get started. And that you're thinking, right, of giving investors something like 15%. That's a pretty traditional distribution of equity for a tech company. Not necessarily for a non-tech company. If you're building a dev shop and you're planning on raising $500,000 on 15% of the company, you might be crazy because it's not going to happen. I can talk a little bit about that if you want, but for a tech company that's building a very scalable product, this is a normal equity distribution. So if you inverse this, right, if 15% of the company is $500,000, then you're effectively saying that your business is worth $3.3 million today. Normally for a traditional business, like a car shop, for a car shop to be worth $3.3 million, they probably need to be making $3.3 million a year in revenue. Otherwise, how are you going to value this repair shop at 3.3 million? But that doesn't really apply to tech companies, right? Because the value of tech companies comes from their potential, right? So the question of whether your business is worth $3.3 million today drives to the question of, well, can your business be worth a multiple of that very soon, right? Can you operate at this scale? Can you scale as fast as a tech company usually scales? So these are some of those economics. Investors are normally looking to make 10 investments and have 9 of those investments more or less fail, and one of those investments do really, really well, right? Get a 10x or more multiplier on their investment. So in this case, and it's not that they're willing to kind of invest in a lot of bad companies. Essentially, investors invest in companies and they think that all of these 10 companies are going to do really well and are going to be worth 10x that. But it's a very risky business, and most of them will fail. So question is, can your business be worth $33 million in 5 years or so? And how do we justify that $33 million valuation? Again, today it's just an idea. We don't have anything to justify it with. It's just some guys with an idea. But how do we justify this valuation in the future? Well, maybe because 5 years from now, your business is going to be making about $6 million in EBITDA. That's net income, net profit, where a company can be valued as a 5x multiplier on their EBITDA, therefore giving you the $33 million valuation. That could work. Another alternative is that somebody's willing to buy you, your team, your tech for something like $35 million. That's another case to make and say, hey, like my business is worth 3.3 million today. Maybe somebody's acquiring your customers. I always like this example because when Facebook acquired Instagram, they paid about $3 per active user. Instagram had about 300 million active users, and Facebook paid about $1 billion for Instagram when they bought it. That's 2012. So, the monthly active users, if they're really active, like they can be worth a certain value. Can you maybe raise a Series B, right? And you're still continuing to expand. And can you raise a Series B at this valuation? Or are you on a path to going public? Like you need to check at least one of these ticks if you're a tech company. So please, try and kind of reason around that expansion. I see a lot of companies that are trying to raise investor capital. They're trying to raise that $500,000 round, but their expectation is that 5 years from now, they're going to be making $5 million in revenue. That doesn't tick any of these marks because it's too small, right? Tech companies operate in these valuations because of their potential for really fast, really aggressive expansion. I see a lot of companies kind of struggle with this part too, because they're like, okay, we're raising $500,000 now, and then after that, we'll just be a profitable business, and that's it. So where's the ROI for the investors, right? And tech investors are not looking for profits. They're normally looking for exits. That's the quick way to get their money out. And when your intention is to run your business for the rest of your life and inherit it to your kids, that normally makes that business incompatible with venture capital investors. Okay. Next up, budgeting. So I have gave you the answer to this one, but let's see if you guys are paying attention. Little pop quiz. So how much should you raise if you're raising a seed round? Drop the A, B, or C answer in the comments. A, 18 months of runway. B, whatever it takes to reach the next funding round. Or C, enough to launch the product. What do you guys think? I see an A from Giorgio. I see a B from Alan. Let's see. People struggle with this one. I know it's a trick question. I see 2 A's. Okay, let's start by writing off C. Indeed, it's not C. So if you're thinking of C, forget about it. Why isn't it C? Because if you're a seed company, you should have already launched a product, right? Remember, we launched a product between pre-seed and seed. So it's definitely not C. Now, A gets a lot of people confused because because it's become sort of like startup pop culture that you should raise about 18 months of runway. And that's not entirely false. The reason I kind of stop here for a sec is that this happened to me. Like when we raised our seed round, we literally raised 18 months of runway. Like I budgeted 18 months of runway. And when we were about to run out of money, and then I went out to raise the next round, we had about $1 million in annual run rate as a SaaS product. And I couldn't raise the next round. And the reason I couldn't raise it was because companies I would go to investors and they'd say, oh, well, we invest in Series A companies and you're not a Series A company yet. Series A companies have $2 million in annual run rate, 1.5, 2 million. That was the standard then. And I think it is still today. Like a Series A company has normally 1.5, 2 million, maybe more annual run rate. And you're still only at 1 million. So you're not a Series A company yet. Go back. No worry, we like what you do, but just come back to us in a few months when you reach Series A. And I'm like, I can't come back in a few months because I'm running out of money. I can't get there. So the answer to this question is definitely B. Yes, it's whatever it takes to reach the next funding round. But of course, with the assumption that reaching the next fundable milestone is going to take a few months. Normally, it's going to take about 12 months. At least, maybe 18 months to get to that next round. And then you always have to raise a cushion, right? Because when you reach that and you're spending money really aggressively, then you'll still need 6 months of runway to raise the round and close the next round of funding and move on, right? So it's probably around 18 months of runway, but that's not what you should be measuring your budget around. It's whatever it takes to reach the next funding round. Another point on that is a lot of you often get this conversation with investors, which is, hey, like, okay, you're raising a seed, great. You're raising $2 million seed round, great. And an investor will ask, well, what if you only raise 1 million? Can you still make it? And the founder will like almost automatically say, yeah, sure. Yeah, we can work with just 1 million. It's like, really? Can you? Because if you get stuck between seed and Series A, there's no funding round in the middle. So you either raise the two or not raise at all, because otherwise things are not going to work out. So that's a really important point. Again, I'm speaking from my own life traumas, getting stuck between one and the other. Normally, when you get stuck between seed and Series A, you read about this on TechCrunch sometimes. Oh, like this company raised a post-seed round. It's not a Series A, it's a post-seed round. Post-seed rounds are usually really bad news. That means that somebody got stuck between those two and they had to raise a round with not great conditions. So how do you not get stuck between those two? By running a good budget. And we're going to talk about that for a few minutes. So a typical pitch deck, and I get this so many times. A typical pitch deck, and I get this from CFOs sometimes, like financial founders. Founders with a financial experience, they still do this, which is, hey, yeah, this is our pitch deck, and we're gonna launch, and then we're gonna generate 700 orders, and then we're just gonna grow 10% month over month. That's it. So like literally what they've done for their budget on the revenue line is they've just added 700 or whatever that number was, multiplied that by 110%, and just drag that to the end of the spreadsheet. And if you do that and you plot that into a chart, you're going to end up with a really beautiful looking hockey stick chart. But whenever I see hockey stick charts like this on a pitch deck, I immediately infer that somebody just did the formula dragging thing. And it doesn't work. So this is not how you run forecasts. How you should be running forecasts at any stage, even pre-seed stage, is by understanding, well, what's going to drive your expenses. You, of course, want to budget how much money you need to get to that milestone, right? Probably the next round of funding, but maybe it's a revenue goal, maybe it's your exit, maybe was your last round of funding. So how much does it take to get there? And the money that you spend is really a combination of two numbers. How much revenue you're going to make over those few months, and how much expenses are you going to have? But the question is, what's going to drive these revenues? What's going to drive these expenses? Oftentimes, you need to spend money to make money, right? So if you suddenly cut your marketing budget completely, then your revenue will suffer, right? You can't assume that those two are not correlated. What a lot of people do is that they just take a revenue sample, they just scale it by 110% every month, and then they just say, oh yeah, and we're going to take 10% of that or 20% of that. That'll be a marketing budget. But that's not how it works. You first have to spend money on marketing, and then you generate revenue. So understanding these drivers, that's what I want to stop and for a second make sure that you do your homework the right way. I'm using the orders example, but to you, orders, depending on the company, orders might be traffic, subscriptions, monthly active users, drivers, whatever. And then the question is, what does your traffic, what does your revenue drive? Is it extra fulfillment costs? Maybe you're in e-commerce, you have to ship stuff every time somebody buys it. Maybe it's hosting costs for most of us tech companies. Maybe it's support staff. Maybe it's account managers, right? If you're serving enterprise or like SMBs, maybe you need an account manager for every 100 customers. So there's a cause and effect. There's a causality side to this, right? Again, a lot of founders usually take revenue and then they extract 20% of that for marketing. It's the other way around, right? So some concepts that I want to make sure you guys understand. Revenue drive, whatever revenue drives, whatever comes from revenue is costs, right? So the more revenue you have, the more costs you have. If you're an e-commerce, the more revenue you have, the more shipping costs. That's a cost. See, COGS is cost of goods sold. That's an accounting term, but you're going to see it in your income statements, in your P&L. Your accountants are going to be using this a lot. So that's what it means. So the more revenue you make, the more hosting costs you have. The more revenue you make, the more credit card fees you have to pay. The more revenue you make, the more fulfillment costs. If you're in e-commerce, you're selling t-shirts, you have to print more t-shirts. That's just what it is. So don't forget to budget your costs. Normally, people get this part right. Again, the part that they get wrong is this other side, the drivers. So what's a driver of your revenue? What do you have to spend to generate extra revenue? And do you understand what those drivers are? So examples of drivers. You could have a driver that's your paid marketing budget, right? That's search ads, that could be influencer marketing, display ads, retargeting, sponsorships. Your driver might be outbound sales. So this is a human driver. It's a team. and you have a team that's doing business development, going to conferences, cold emailing people, and that's a driver of your revenue. In theory, the bigger your team, the more revenue you generate, right? That's a direct correlation. Paid marketing, more revenue. I mean, more paid marketing, more revenue, more bigger team, more revenue. Same with traffic, right? Traffic could be another driver. Or organic. I normally like to group word of mouth, referrals, SEO into organic traffic. Few companies get away with like a significant amount of the revenue coming from referrals. So normally a good way to track it is just to kind of include that in the organic traffic that we get, which of course could be enhanced by SEO or social media and so on. Returning customers could be another driver, right? So the more, you could assume that some customers come back, you're maybe a subscription, so you have some revenue that comes from your existing customer base. So all of these are drivers of revenue, but they're not all created equal. Some drivers have a direct cost to them, like paid marketing, right? You have to literally spend $1 to make $1. Hopefully spend $1 to make $3, but you get the point. Same with the outbound sales team, right? You have to pay these salaries to maybe a few months or a few weeks down the line, you convert more customers, right? So these are all drivers, not all created equal. Organic traffic is not a direct expense. Organic traffic, for example, I mean, it's obviously driven by your social media efforts, it's driven by your SEO efforts, but it's not that by doubling your SEO team, you're suddenly going to double your organic traffic. That's not how it works. Same with returning customers. So if you take my little colorful boxes into kind of one step further, one extra evolution of these boxes, what you could end up with is something like this. And this is what we call a financial model map. Notice that I haven't used the word financial modeling until now, because a financial model is a mouthful, but in the end, a financial model is just a budget sheet, a pro forma template, budgeting sheet. We have a bunch of names for it. But then the idea is that when you are budgeting, you have to make sure that there's a logic behind your budget, right? So in this case, this is a typical my financial model map for an e-commerce platform, where you have here at the very top, you have paid marketing, organic traffic as drivers, right? So if you're an e-commerce shop, you'll get some organic traffic, some social media, and so on. Again, it's not a blue box, it's a white box, and then you get some extra traffic from paid, right? So the more you spend on the paid marketing side, the more revenue you generate. That is the driver of orders, right? And if we move down here, we have orders. So orders from new customers, which adds up to the total orders. For every order, we have to pay a fulfillment cost, and then on the revenue side, each order has an average revenue, and then of course the fulfillment of the products themselves. But last but not least, from some of those new customers might become recurring customers. So we have this little sidetrack here where some of these new customers might come back and make repeat orders at a certain frequency, and that adds up to the total number of orders. So this is I think a very simple outline of how an e-commerce platform works. But this is if you plot this into a spreadsheet, I think you can get a really accurate, really fair estimation of what revenue could look like. Now this you can turn into this, right? So we have a few templates for this, by the way. I think my team has already posted those. And this feels like a bunch of numbers and a bunch of complicated shit, but the reality is that at the backbone of this is just a simple model map like the one before. If you understand the model map, you can literally generate a spreadsheet. You can plot that on a spreadsheet without too much difficulty. Or you can use any of our templates and understand what you're doing because you understand what is driving what. Again, if you take any notes from this section, is please don't just assume 10% growth, because that's not how life works, not how companies work. Some couple of ideas on how we can help. We have a financial modeling bootcamp, so consider the last 10 minutes. Like literally, our bootcamps are like a 5-day version of the last 10 minutes. So normally it's it's a really intensive 1-week sprint. We do a combination of some recorded materials and some live sessions that I host myself. So the financial modeling bootcamp runs every month. Next session is on October 14th, and it's just $99 a month if you want to. Sorry, $99 flat if you want to participate. But also, if you want our team to help out, if you want, if you're not very spreadsheet savvy or you're in a hurry and you need this quicker, our team can help out. We have a fractional CFO service where our team kind of gets involved, takes over, builds a spreadsheet for you, teaches you how to use it, teaches you how to fill it out, and then keeps it up to date with your actuals. So that's a bit of what we do. on the financial side. Okay, last section before we go to questions. On the reaching out to investors, one simple rule: do not ever, 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 ever cold email investors. It doesn't work. Don't waste your time. The way to get investors on board is via warm intros. If you don't have a network, you can work on you can work on building a network first, and then using that to leverage intros. This is a screenshot of an email intro that you can ask somebody that you know. Just a good standard approach on how to do it. Just be nice to them. Send a blurb that they can forward. But if you're navigating, if you're looking for investors, really the process is going to find investors in your area, space, industry, going to LinkedIn to find out if you're connected to them, if you have second level degree connections that could do intros, and just leveraging those intros to meet all these people. So normally, you'll be able to contact maybe one or two intros every few months. Like, people aren't at your service to do intros. But we posted a video on our Startup Club channel the other day on startup accelerators, which to me are a good bridge of this. A lot of founders that we talk to kind of have these answers like, well, I don't know any investors. It's like, well, first do your homework, see if you know any of them indirectly. And if you've exhausted that and you really don't know anyone, then you should maybe consider a startup accelerator. I didn't know a single investor before I started doing startups, and the accelerators that I went through were very much a bridge, like a fast track to building a network. Another tool that we have on Slidebean is an investor finder. We recently ramped it up pretty dramatically with with a big cleanup and a whole new investor list. Essentially, what we've done is we've crawled the web for everybody who's invested in companies, and we've made this database of investors, and we let you filter that database by investors in your area, industry, company stage. And we give you not their emails, but their LinkedIn profiles, so you can go and see if you know anybody. That's included in any of our subscription plans, Investor Finder. So, okay, so now we've getting to the very end. We've essentially seen this journey, right? From the pitch deck is not the process. Is not everything. It's just the beginning of a very long process. We have a video on this. You can also check out. It's called The Painful Road from Pitch Deck to Funding. But just a reminder of resources before I go and answer your questions. If you have any, if you can help out at all with either a one-on-one session on reviewing your pitch deck, with either a one-on-one session with me on strategizing about the round, or with the bootcamp, that is all included with our 99 a month Accelerate plan. Or if you need this more urgently, or if you want our help writing the pitch deck, you should shoot us an email and we can help out. That's all the slides I have. So let me stop my screen share and get to your questions. So I have the live stream of the YouTube live stream, which I see a lot of people tuned into today. So thanks, guys. And I have some questions here on the Zoom. So drop your questions in either chat and I'll get to those. So I'll start with Ramon. No tech co-founder, even with all the no-code tools available. I mean, if you can build your product with no-code tools on your own without anybody's help, then you don't need a tech co-founder. You're your own tech co-founder if you can do it, right? But no-code tools make sense if you can prove that you can use them, right? So we've built a lot of. I'm a big fan of Zapier. We use Zapier for so many things. I'm working on a new, like, an AI investor pitch deck reviewer that takes your pitch deck and reviews each slide based on our knowledge of it. And I'm doing it all in Zapier. And it's, you can build a lot of things on Zapier, but it depends on what your product is. Maybe it can or can't be built on no-code platforms, one, or maybe you can't build it. That's the point. Whoever builds your product needs to be a co-founder. I see, Alan. So I'm struggling with the word count on my pitch deck slides. Specifically for the deck, I would send to investors via email. Obviously, the word count falls when you present in person. You can't just say that text. Yeah, so good point. To me, in the ideal world, you're going to work on 2 decks, ideally. The main deck, so the one you should do first, is a deck that's self-explanatory, that stands on its own, and that you can email. That's the main deck you should be working on. If you only have time for one, that's the one you want to do. Again, it should be self-explanatory. Somebody should be able to read it and get the context of what your company does without somebody presenting it. That's how you get intros, by emailing this deck to people. And then if you have the time, And if it's worth it to you, you can do what we call a presenting deck, which is a deck that's more like a stagey showmanship deck, right? Maybe you present on stage like a demo day thing where you don't need a whole explanation of any concept. You can just put like keywords in there and just explain that. And you can that deck maybe 40 slides because each slide is just one word or one image, and you're presenting it and adding magic to it. Those are two very, very different decks. Again, the latter one, you only normally do if you have to do like a demo day type of event. But the deck that most of us need, and the deck that where rounds are raised on, is the email deck. When you get in meeting with investors, normally you don't need to do like a whole showmanship deck to them, unless it's like an investor group, like a group of people. But normally you're going to be presenting to one or two guys, so it's more like a conversation, and you can follow your email deck or maybe an extended version of that deck. You don't need to kind of like put your demo day mask on and like pretend that you're on stage. Normally that's not the way those go. Okay, I see. I see. You're on an email. Sorry, I don't have your name, but incorporation, location, team location for animation middleware. I don't know. Like normally, in the US, it's pretty standard to have companies incorporated in Delaware. If you want to raise venture capital, Delaware is pretty much a standard. A lot of investors will force you to convert to a Delaware C Corp if you're not a Delaware C Corp. So I just figure it's just best to start with that. If you have something else, if you're like an LLC and so on already, then wait until the round is actually getting some traction, and and you'll probably be asked to convert, but don't spend time on that unless you're ready to raise. I see one from YouTube. Hi Hakeem. What should be the most important slide for a pre-seed company pitch deck? I mean, you can watch the recording. We went through all the slides, but I don't think there's one very specific, very important slide. I think on pre-seed, if I were to choose one, I would probably say the team, because a pre-seed company is really a company with an idea, early traces of product, no customer traction. So the question is, well, can this team execute on this? So I think that's the biggest question. Seeing the team's talent, seeing the team's experience in the market, I'd say that's one. Sometimes you have, like, this was me a while ago. Like I mean, I'm not saying that I'm famous or anything. I'm just saying, like, I wasn't nobody. I don't come from an Ivy League school. I didn't have a lot of startup experience. It's like, why would my team slide be stronger than anybody else's, right? So I didn't have a lot of leverage to play on the team slide back then. Maybe I could do a little bit of stuff now that I've run a company for a few years, but so maybe the next most important slide might be the product slide, just showing that you're building something that's really exciting. Maybe, if I had to pick favorites. Okay, so Ramon asking, when you have a chance, could you cover the details and cost of you guys creating the deck for us? Good question. I mean, I'm happy to answer non-salesy questions if you have any more. But Ramon, really quickly, we'll paste the link on our website. Normally, our pitch deck writing projects, I mean, you can send your deck to our team only for design. Normally, those projects cost a few $100, where our team doesn't touch the content of the deck. We're just designing it, making it look better. So it's like a design agency. Hopefully, instead of going to Upwork or Fiverr, you go with us, our team that does pitch decks all day. But on writing the pitch deck, which is normally a 3-week long process, our team studies your company. We get familiar with it. We get familiar with the story, your vision, and so on. Normally, those projects go for around $2,500 for an early stage company. Okay, so I see Shriran. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Sorry. I'm a non-tech co-founder. I would like to know, how can I build a tech team? And is it better to offer them as a freelance work, or should I promise them some part of the business? I know it's worth nothing initially, but I would like to know the best way. Good question. And I'll talk a little about this since we don't have any more questions. We made a video on this, by the way. It's called "Why MBAs Are Shitty Co-Founders." It's on our Startup Club channel if you want to watch the articulate version of what I'm about to say. The answer to this is, if I were a tech founder, let's say that I'm an engineer and I hear somebody else that comes in and says, hey, I have this idea for a product and I want you to build it. And first of all, I need to ensure that this is an exciting enough idea. One, if I'm not excited by that idea, then this is just a job that I won't like very much. But let's say that I am excited about that idea. How much of the company would I expect in return for building this idea? Would I do this for a salary? No. as a tech co-founder, if I'm taking the risk of quitting my day job and going to work for this person, going to build this product, I would not do this for just money alone. Um, so equity is a requirement. How much equity? Well, in your case, if you're pitching this idea to me and you can't build it without me, and this is just an idea and there's no traction on it, there's no progress on it, well, I think I'm entitled to about 50% of this company. And that's normally the founder relationship, right? So you have two people that need each other to build this business and they get together, and the equity split should kind of reflect how important each of those two roles are for the company. Again, a lot of other stuff comes into play there where, for example, what do you bring to the company, right? Do I really need you? And that kind of connects to the Facebook origin story, which I'm sure everybody knows. Like Mark didn't need the Winklevi. So why, so he cheated on them. Like stole the idea. Yeah, shady stuff. But that's the point. Like what were they bringing to the table? Just the idea? You need to bring more, right? You need to either bring your experience fundraising, your experience running a company, your experience on marketing, so that, it just feels like a symbiotic relationship between two people that are valuable to each other. So that's I think super key. And one part that executive co-founders, let's call them MBAs or like business co-founders from a business background, uh, downplay, right? Like, oh, I'm really good at operating a business, but is that enough? Like, tech startups generally are product businesses, so it's the at least during the very first few years, the most important part is just a team that can execute on this product. Um, that connects a little bit to the no code tools and the tech co-founder part. Um, Now, that being said, if you're bringing money to the business, right, as an executive co-founder, maybe you've invested a little bit of money, you've de-risked the product, you've maybe get a few customers, then of course the equity split should not be the same. If you're paying this engineer some money for it and you're not taking a salary, then that makes that 50-50 split uneven now. So that's the way I kind of think about that. If you're building a lead gen or in marketplace business, is TAM calculated on supply or demand side? Well, I guess both, depending on how much. I guess you need to take both into the math and then estimate, well, I guess, how much GMV, how much gross merchandise value is going to happen through the platform, and then your percentage of that, right? So obviously the TAM for this business is not just the volume of transactions, right? So eBay's TAM is not the entire amount of sales that will happen on eBay. It's their percentage, right? It's, oh, we'll process, I don't know, $500 billion worth of people selling shit on eBay, and we'll take that 10% commission. So our TAM is the 50, just to clarify. Okay. I have 3 minutes left, which leaves Alan here with the last question. So I'm struggling with word count. Oh, no. This came in already. Sorry. No, I think that may be it for questions. Yep, I think we're good with questions. Okay, guys. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Thanks for sticking around. I know it was an intensive hour, but hope that you found all of this stuff useful. If you did, drop us a comment, drop us an email. We appreciate it. If you have some feedback on stuff that didn't work, also drop us an email. But if we can help with any of this process, we've been doing this for many years and we've been helping many thousands of startups navigate this stuff. So shoot us an email about that, or just go on slidebean.com and sign up for our platform. We'll see you in the next one.